Hi, I'm Sara and welcome to Hen Corner. Today we start in the strawberry bed here in the kitchen garden because it's June and we're making jam. Strawberry jam is made with just 3 ingredients, and now with the strawberries in season, it's the perfect time to make it. All we need are strawberries, obviously, sugar and lemons. Now we have the strawberries and the sugar in equal quantities, and then the lemons are really important because they do two really crucial jobs. One, the acidity of the lemon helps balance the sweetness of the sugar and the naturally sweet strawberries. But the most important reason why we add the lemons is for the pectin. And pectin is an ingredient found in a lot of fruits, particularly in citrus fruits, that help a jelly to set. So we're not adding gelatin or anything like that to this jam. We're using the natural strawberries and the juices and the flavour, the whole fruits. We're using the sugar, and it's the lemon juice and the pectin that can be found in the pith and the pips, and I'll explain how to do that as we go, that help us to get a jelly that sets perfectly, a jam that sets perfectly, that we can enjoy, especially in the summer with scones and cream. And then if we've still got some left, it's a top treat throughout the winter. So to prepare the fruit, we've got 1 kilo of fruit and we've got 1 kilo of sugar, equal quantities of strawberries and sugar. We need to simply cut the tops off. And do you know what, they're quite big. I'm going to cut them into quarters. Now, just whilst I'm doing this, I'm going to explain the important bits of kit that we need. So as well as our lovely ingredients, we need a very big pan, and the big pan is very important. Don't ever try and fill the pan thinking, oh, well, I can get loads in there, I can get more and more and more. This is a preserving pan. It's specifically designed for making jam, and the reason why it's perfect for the job is that the diameter of the top of the pan is bigger than the diameter at the bottom of the pan, meaning that whatever we're cooking in here has got a large surface area to evaporate water. And as we know, making jam is a form of preserving, and it's ensuring that we can have beautiful strawberries right through the year. Now, they're not going to be fresh, they're going to be preserved in the jam, but the taste of strawberries throughout the year is definitely a treat because they're available in such a small window during our summer months. So what I'm doing, I'm quartering the strawberries, I'm adding them to the preserving pan. If you haven't got a preserving pan, just use your biggest saucepan. You may have to scale down the recipe a little bit because, as I said, we can't fill the saucepan because we need lots of space for the strawberry jam to boil up. And the boiling process is really key because the boiling process is removing excess water. And removing water, as we've said in previous videos, is a way of reducing the risk of bacterial growth. So you're reducing the water, you're using a high volume of sugar, which again inhibits bacteria growth, and then we're potting it up in sterilised jars. Now, just as I'm preparing these strawberries, I'm going to tell you a bit about the process and things to watch for. So, quartering the strawberries, nice big strawberries, we're going to add the sugar, we're going to add the lemon juice, and as it's boiling, we're wanting to make sure that it is getting the perfect set. Now, if we have strawberry jam and we don't boil it enough, there will still be quite a bit of the natural juices, and it's water in the fruit, although it's lovely strawberry flavoured water. There'll be too much water in our liquid here in the pan if we do not boil it enough. And therefore, if it's watery, we're going to end up with a syrup, not a jam. And a syrup's very nice, and a syrup can make very nice drinks. You can use it as a cordial, you can pour it over ice cream, but it won't be a jam that you can dollop onto your scones. On the other hand, if you boil it too much, then what we end up with is toffee. and we end up with something that is predominantly sugar, and we end up with something that's set so hard, the sugar potentially will start to caramelize and you'll have a toffee sort of flavor, and you can end up with your what is a liquid in the pan once it's set, because it's melted sugar, will become just a solid a solid lump in your jar that you're not going to be able to get out with a spoon. So we want that middle ground of a perfect set, and I'll be showing you what we're looking for there. We are trying to get a jelly-like consistency that has a wobble. We want it to be thick enough that it holds its own, so you can have a nice big spoonful. And there's ways of testing for this. We can test by having a saucer in the freezer, and we call that the wrinkle test. And by putting a little spoon of the hot jam onto the cold saucer, it helps it to cool quickly, and then we can push it with our finger to see whether a wrinkle forms, and if it does, we know that the jam has boiled for enough. We can do the wobble test. We can hold up a spoon with the hot jam and see if we can wobble it, whether it's thick enough to hold its shape while we wobble it. And then the other test, which really is the simplest way, although it does rely on a little bit of technology, and as you know, with all the recipes that we do here at Hen Corner, we try to go back to the original roots of the recipe and the techniques that would have been used many years ago, so they wouldn't have had the technology years ago. But what we are going to use today is a digital thermometer, and I've got one here, and we're going to set it to 106 degrees, and we can be confident that when the jam gets to 106 degrees that we know it is at the perfect set. So I'm going to put the sugar in now. I haven't quite got all my strawberries in yet, so we've got 1 kilo of strawberries, 1 kilo of sugar, just getting the last of the strawberries in, and then we're going to work with the lemon juice. And our very last strawberry. So in this pan, we've got 1 kilo of strawberries that have had the tops cut off, the stalks, we've had them quartered, and we've also got 1 kilo of granulated sugar. And then we've got 2 lemons here. I'm going to cut them in half. I'm going to juice them. And we don't want the pips going in. We do need the pips because they've got pectin in, which help the jam to set, but we don't want the pips floating around with the strawberries. As you know, the fresher the fruit, the higher the pectin levels. So if you can use really fresh lemons, then you'll have more pectin. Right. Pouring that lemon juice on, the juice of 2 lemons. And then what we're going to do, we're going to put the lemon skins, we're going to quarter the quarters, quarter the halves. Put them into a saucepan, along with the pips. We'll cover it with water and bring that to a simmer for about 5 minutes whilst the jam is starting to warm gently. And then we're going to strain our lemony pectin stock into the jam mixture. There we go. Let's get the seeds in as well, the pips in. We're going to boil this for about 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes. Strain it into the jam mixture whilst this is still warming on the hob. Bring it all up to a boil, and then we'll be able to start checking that the jam is set properly. What we're looking for is a high foaming boil. We want to see that the jam is boiling up really high and filling the pan. Be careful that it doesn't boil over. Can you see that the jam is getting darker in colour as it's getting nearer to that setting point. This is because the water's evaporating, and then the intensity of flavours and colours just gets so much stronger. So as we can see the bubbles are getting darker, we know that it's nearly ready. We can give it a stir now and then when we think it's nearly ready, we can do our wobble test to see if the jam is thick enough but able to hold its own for a nice wobble on the spoon. We're able to do our saucer test with a wrinkle to see if it wrinkles when we push our finger against the cooling jam on the cold saucer. And then we can check the temperature. Is it 106 degrees? And if so, then we can turn the heat off. We can leave the jam to settle for about 5 to 10 minutes, because at the moment the strawberries are floating to the top. And then we can bring it back to the table to pot it up in sterilised jars. It's time to pot up our jam. I've got the jam sitting here. We know that it's cooked. It reached 106 degrees. It passed all the wobble tests and the wrinkle tests. We know that it's ready. And I've just let it stand for a moment so that we can stir the strawberries through so they're not sitting at the top of the jam. Otherwise we'll end up with a jar of clear jelly and just solid strawberries on the top. We want it to be distributed. Now what I've got here, I've got my jars which I've sterilised and the lids in this saucepan. It's all rather hot. So the jars, I've washed them, they're brand new jars. You can use recycled jars if it's just for your own use at home. I've washed them in hot soapy water, I've rinsed them, and then I've had them on this baking tray in the oven at about 110 degrees for about 15 minutes to make sure that they're warm, they're dry and they're sterilised. And then the lids of the jars I have washed, and then I've simmered in hot water in a saucepan. I don't really want the lids going into the oven because the lids have got plastic seals and then the plastic could melt and things like that. Really handy gadget. This is called a jam funnel, and it pops it into the top of the jar, and then as you ladle in the jam, it doesn't go everywhere. Now, one thing I will mention, I've said that we've left the jam to cool for a bit, and I've said that we've got our hot jars here. It's really important that the jam and the jars are about the same temperature, because if you put a hot jam into cold jars, the glass will crack. If you put a cold jam into hot jars, the glass will crack. So we want them to be about the same temperature. Glass withstands a high temperature. It's made by melting, glass is melted in the process. So glass takes good heat, but it's glass and cold water get together that can cause cracking, and we really don't want that to happen. So the jars are nice and hot, the jam is nice and hot. I'm going to give the jam a final stir. I can already see some wrinkles on the top as it's starting to set. No, not set, but as it's cooling. So we know that it has reached that setting point. And then we take a ladle and we spoon it into the jar. Now there's little bits of foam on the top, which I don't mind. It is just bubbles. It's just bubbles, and you can stir them in, you can scoop them out. Some people say put a knob of butter in. I've never tried that, but I don't really want butter in the jam because jam should just be sugar and fruit. So I don't do that. I don't worry about it. The bubbles just go to the top. So there we go. We've got a lovely strawberry jam. And I think that this batch, using a kilo of sugar and a kilo of fruit, will make about 5 jars. Good job, I've got some spare strawberries. I'm going to make another batch. So once we have got the jam jar filled, we don't want it to go all the way to the top. We want a little bit of a gap. We then take our hot lid, pop it on, give it a tight turn. There we go. Ooh, it's hot. Make sure that the jam jar lid is on properly, and then allow it just to cool naturally at room temperature. If you see that the strawberries are starting to float to the top, then in about sort of 15 minutes, you can just turn it up one way, upside down and back again. There we go. It's a complicated way of saying it. You can just invert, is that the right term? Up and down, and that will help the strawberries to mix around again, and then just leave it until it's cold. You'll see it set perfectly, and then you can scoop it up, enjoy it on a scone or on ice cream or on toast or in a sandwich or in a cake, all kinds of things. But that is how we make our strawberry jam here at Hen Corner. It's an annual tradition, especially here in June and July when the strawberries are in season, and you just can't beat it. So have a go and let me know how you get on, and I hope to see you soon. Join us on the journey.